Well,
Yeah.
it causes,
Yeah.
you know, craziness in society. It brings
Yeah.
out the worst in everybody.
Oh
They know
yeah,
they
I've seen
can't
that. I
test
mean,
this.
I went to a lot of the protests,
course.
and you get like these redneck francophones, anti-Muslim, and
And we have
you know,
some on the Anglophone side
of course,
too.
yeah.
I'm like,
But what I'm
who-
getting at is this.
Who says that we don't have that many? 'Cause
But
we
do you
don't
know
even have that
who
many.
supports the charter more than anyone else?
Who?
The hardcore atheist francophones. the ones that are anti-religious. You know, they're
Yeah,
the
I know.
biggest.
And they're like,
you
you know,
know.
like who? You know,
Yeah,
I always say to
yeah.
them, you know, I'm Catholic.
Mm.
That never happened to my great grandmother. You know the reason why it happened. Uneducated, like sort of, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what? So education is a new thing with these people in the last 40 years, university? Like, come on, law. You don't have to be a millionaire to go to school. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm so sick of their pathetic, poor me, and they wrecked the whole country, let alone Montreal. So,
I just got the look of death again. This girl always looks at me like, you know, if looks could kill, I'd be dead.
look at her though, another freak from here. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, anyway. Well, good luck.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Happy New Year and all that.
Yes, you too.
And
And
yeah, we're just this is my first protest of the year. Probably not my last.
I'm
but
sure it's not.
See you later.
Happy New Year.
You too. You too. Yes, so we're off to a good start here in 2014. We're at under 19 minutes of protest, and we've already had a few interesting conversations. This American woman is a bit of a character, obviously, and I can't say I agree with everything that comes out of her mouth, but on the other hand, she seems to be big on people standing up for their rights, and I'm definitely doing that. She also, being a Catholic, understands, you know, how the Catholic Church tends to be a scapegoat for clergy sexual misconduct, when in fact pretty well every other denomination have their own clergy sexual misconduct problems, and quite frankly, some of them, including the Unitarian Church, are actually in some ways worse than the Catholics when it comes to dealing with clergy misconduct. You know, I can't imagine that the Vatican would ever accuse a Roman Catholic of blasphemous libel for blogging about some Roman Catholic priests that are engaged in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. But, you know, down in Boston, got a bunch of atheist Unitarians who thought it'd be like a really good idea to accuse me of the archaic crime of blasphemous libel in an attempt to intimidate me into removing blog posts about Unitarian Universalists who are in fact guilty of such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. We'll just let this truck pass, and once the background noise is diminished, we shall continue our little monologue on that point. So as I was saying, you know, right now, right at this very moment, the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations is accusing me of the crime of blasphemous libel for allegedly making, and this is an exact quote from the cease and desist demand letter that I received, allegedly making unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So they're essentially saying that, you know, that I'm making false, untrue allegations about Unitarian Universalist ministers engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape, and that in doing so, this constitutes the archaic crime of blasphemous libel. Well, there's a couple of problems with that brazen accusation. Two major ones. The first one being that the few allegations they actually did make about Unitarian Universalists engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape are by no means unfounded. They're actually true. They're based on newspaper reports about Unitarian Universalists who are actually convicted of either rape or pedophilia, or indeed both. In fact, I hadn't prior to receiving that cease and desist demand letter, I hadn't actually blogged about a Unitarian minister who'd engaged in the despicable crime known as pedophilia. Not to say that I couldn't have, but I just hadn't done so. I had blogged about a case of what I understand to be an ordinary layperson in the parish of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein by the name of Richard Buell. And it's interesting because in light of what I just said earlier in this clip to the woman about Unitarian Universalists constantly pointing the finger at the Roman Catholic clergy sexual misconduct while totally ignoring clergy sexual misconduct within their own group. This actually arose, my awareness of this case of rape of preteen girls, in other words, a pedophile rapist by the name of Richard Buell. It came about as a result of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, under her pseudonym of Peace Bang, blogging in a very strident manner about Roman Catholic clergy sexual abuse. In fact, she was blogging about one particular case of comparatively minor sexual abuse, specifically fondling. She was speaking about how a American politician, whose last name was Foley, if I'm not mistaken, was, had attributed his own sexual misconduct to being fondled by a Catholic priest in his youth. Reverend Weinstein was going on and on about Roman Catholic clergy sexual misconduct in a quite strident manner, and basically even saying that the actual Roman Catholic belief system somehow was responsible for this. And I came along and I said, well, what about good day, sir. Happy New Year. I'd be a lot happier if you guys decide to sit down and have a chat with me and settle this dispute. It's unfortunate that you can't live up to your own rhetoric. So that was David Rollert, the husband of Reverend Diane Rollert. And I just, made the point that, the church as an institution, to say nothing of Reverend Diane Rollert herself, is totally incapable of living up to its own rhetoric. In other words, the church doesn't live up to its own claim, principles, and purposes in its relations with me, and quite frankly, Reverend Diane Rollert isn't living up to her own rhetoric, her own personal rhetoric in terms of how she responds to me. So, getting back to the issue at hand, let's see how much time I got left on this. I got a few more minutes. Getting back to the whole business of Unitarians pointing the finger at Catholics while trying to cover up and hide their own clergy abuse. This is what happened. I saw this. I made some comments on the blog post of Peace Bang, who I only knew as Peace Bang at the time. I did not know her actual full identity, although I did have some clues to it, but I'd never followed those clues up. So Peace Bang is attacking the Catholics over clergy abuse. I come along and say, well, what about good day? What about Reverend Mac Mitchell and other clergy sexual misconduct? Reverend Mac Mitchell was guilty of raping preteen Tibetan refugees. So what does Peace Bang do? Well, she just deletes all of my comments, just hides them. Basically covers up and hides the fact that Unitarian Universalists have their own clergy sexual misconduct problems. And it was as a result of that I said, I'm going to out this Peace Bang. As I said, I did not know who she was. So with a little bit of Googling around, I quickly found that the most likely suspect was one Reverend Victoria Weinstein. Good day, sir. And I went to the website of First Parish Norwell to do a little bit more research to see whether or not I had the right suspect, and in doing so I became aware of the fact that a fellow by the name of Richard Buell had recently been convicted of some crime. It wasn't clear what crime, but what was clear was that Reverend Deborah Pope Lance was holding a special meeting to discuss with the congregation what had happened with respect to the recent conviction of one Richard Buell. So I went looking to see what Richard Buell did, and it turned out that Richard Buell was guilty, or found guilty, of raping preteen girls. So here is Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, well, she wasn't a doctor at the time, just regular Reverend, stridently attacking the Catholics over comparatively minor clergy sexual misconduct, while in her own parish, one of her own parishioners was just found guilty of raping preteen girls, including a female family member and a neighbor's daughter. Wonderful. Yep, I think on that note, this is going to pretty well wrap up. But yes, talk about hypocrisy. Talk about double standards. All right. Looks like we might have a bit more time on this. I assumed that it was going to run out any second. In any case, it is January 5th, 2014. We're off to the start of a brand spanking new year of protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. And we're off to a pretty good start in the first half hour here.